Hello, my name is Kate McMahon, and I am the host today for What's Happening. And I'm very pleased to introduce our guest today, Madhavi Venkatesan, and she is the Executive Director of Sustainable Practices. Welcome.
Hi, how are you, Kate? Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Thank you. I'm very much looking forward to learn more about your organization and your mission. So could you begin by sharing what your mission is, please?
Sure. Our name, Sustainable Practices, is really consistent with our mission. Our goal is to actually increase sustainable practices on the Cape and look specifically at human-made choices and human-made relationships with the environment at large. We all live in a time where most of us are very cognizant and understanding of the fact that it's the human footprint that has actually led to the lack of sustainable outcomes that we see around us.
Yes, so it sounds like education may be a large portion of your mission?
The majority of what we do is education-based. We believe specifically that grassroots movements assist in both educating the population, but fundamentally you need to have an educated population to have regulation that meets its intent. So our goal is actually a regulatory goal, but we want a regulatory goal that just basically codifies an already existing social movement. In this particular case, what we're looking at is the reduction of the human footprint on the environment, the way we consume and the way that we understand the life cycle of our consumption choices. So that's what we're really targeting with our education. And as you know, one of our primary initiatives right now, because of the tangibility, is related to plastic bottles.
And I understand that one of the goals is to eliminate plastic bottles here on Cape Cod. Can you tell us a little bit about your strategy there?
I will try to keep it brief, but I'm afraid this is a really passionate area for me, so I'm going to try to put it in a couple phrases because this is a great opportunity to get our message out and hopefully get people to be on board with what we're standing for. We're looking at low-hanging fruit initially because we understand that a lot of people don't completely understand or grasp the need for substituting convenience for responsibility, and that's one of the biggest pushbacks that we get. But what we're looking at is a bylaw that we're working with Pro Bono Legal Counsel to assist us with this across all 15 towns on the Cape, specific to the elimination of town procurement of plastic bottles for distribution and actual use on town property. So it's very low-hanging fruit because, as you can think of that, most towns don't really purchase that much. But the bottom line is government is there to protect the welfare of the people, and there is no doubt that plastic use is actually a negative detriment to both, and forgive the redundancy, but it's a detriment to the environment as well as human health. There's no biodegradation. Majority of it is not recycled, and as the cost of recycling is increasing, we're going to see even more issues on the municipal level. So that's our first point, our first low-hanging fruit. The goal with this, though, gives us an opportunity to educate people, and then that education, we can then follow suit with other towns across the state of Massachusetts that have eliminated commercial distribution. They focus primarily on water. We want to focus on all plastic because it's not the plastic water itself that's the issue, it's the plastic container. So by just limiting it to water, we're sort of precluding the issue of other beverages being an issue both to human health as well as to environmental safety. So that's one aspect. But if I could just add just one other element here. Plastic is tangible to most people because most people have seen it. 40 years ago, plastic was not as pervasive in our economy as it is today. And we had water fountains. Now they're called hydration stations. But we had water fountains. So this is not something that we've always had. It's something that we created out of convenience. And the convenience is really based on an externalizing of costs. We don't take into consideration the pollution impacts of the creation. We don't take in consideration that we're using a non-renewable fuel in the creation. When we're looking at all these other fuel companies and petroleum products, we should also be looking at something very fundamental that we use on a daily basis. 1,500 plastic bottles are used for water on every second in the United States. So I mean, that's a lot of plastic that's being consumed. So why we should focus on this? Because everybody has probably had a plastic bottle in their possession at one time, but they probably have not sat back and looked at the life cycle impact. What I just went over was the resource component and the emissions that come out of the production for maybe a 5-minute consumption life, and then the waste that lives on for an indefinite period of time. So we really are taking advantage of the environment, taking advantage of resources, when we think that our consumption is worthy of that long a term of cost to the environment only because the environment can't speak for itself.
Right. And it's all about the convenience for us as humans.
The majority of what we do wrong is about convenience. Yeah.
So my understanding from an economic perspective, plastics are very inexpensive for manufacturers. Am I correct there?
No, I'm going to step back here because I think this is the area that we really fundamentally need to be more economically literate as a country. They're inexpensive because the only thing that they incorporate are the materials costs that have a market value and the labor costs that have a market value. They don't consider the cost of the waste. They don't consider the cost of the extraction or the impact of that waste long term, which is a bigger cost that we don't even understand, or the impact of the extraction long term. They're looking at point in time estimates of impact. And at any given point in time, one could argue that there probably is minimal to no impact because depends on what time you're measuring it. But stewardship is our human responsibility. It's the only justification for our existence on this planet. We are here because we have dexterity that other animals do not have. We're not here to take advantage of their lack of ability to have that same dexterity and marginalize their existence for the sake of our convenience. So I think that's another component. Now that's my philosophical component that may not necessarily be shared by everyone. But one of the big drawbacks a lot of times to grassroots movements is we focus on just the message that we want. Our goal is to tailor our message so that everybody can sort of have a buy-in here. So if you're very individually focused, the fact that this is a human detrimental impact to yourself, it should be your conduit to take action. If you're focused on your children, the fact that we're leaving behind things that they're going to have to deal with for a very long time should be your call to action. If you're focused on just a moral base, the understanding that this is not consistent with stewardship should be your call to action. So we believe if we can get that message out through these various channels to what actually speaks to each individual, because there is so much bandwidth, so to speak, when you talk about plastic in terms of its detrimental impacts, that it should be tangible to everyone, that we should make a difference here.
Yes, you make some really good points. If we could go back for a second to low-hanging fruit, and when you were talking about the towns, is part of your goal to also be able to present or meet with teachers to get the message out to the kids in the schools?
We would like to do everything we possibly can. We are a growing but small organization still. We're a 501c3 headquartered out of Brewster, Massachusetts. We have a large and growing list of volunteers and sponsors. We are going to push forward over the summer months. I'm a professor during the day, so my time has been somewhat limited to this pushing back during the spring semester, but our goal is over the summer to really create more constituents in support of us. We definitely need groups on the ground, basically, for every town who help push the initiatives forward in terms of town meeting in those various towns across the Cape. So this actually piggybacks off of the 15-town movie screening of Divide and Conquered, which is a documentary film that was based on the Concord plastic water bottle ban. That was the very first in the country, and it was started by Jean Hill. She was subsequently, unfortunately, passed, but the movie is extremely important for people to see, we believe, because most people don't attend town meeting, unfortunately, and because they don't attend town meeting, they don't necessarily know the dynamics of town meeting. And this movie actually traces the whole town meeting process, the process of the bylaw passage, the need for it to be enforceable, and all these other legal elements that people don't necessarily think about. So that's our educational piece. We are going to be showing the last screenings of this in late May. So in June we have other programming that we'll be focusing on in terms of just continuing to build and coalesce individuals.
That's wonderful. Speaking of a film, I understand that a film contest is starting for the organization. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're very excited about the film contest for a variety of reasons. We're using primarily local talent for judges. We have so many extraordinary people that live on this Cape, you know, for many different reasons. But Emmy-winning executive directors and producers of documentary films like Alison Argo. We just screened her film at the Chatham Orpheum, which is one of our sponsoring organizations, The Last Pig, earlier this spring. But she has volunteered to be one of our judges. We have a couple of other individuals also have volunteered. So we're excited about that. But the film contest specifically itself is two divisions. We have what we call a public service announcement component, which is a 30-second or 1-minute short film, and then we have a 2 to 5 minute short film category. Now, each of these categories have to meet certain mandates with regard to specifying a sustainability issue or problem, and also providing a solution. And the actual problems or areas that anybody who'd like to be a part of this film contest may want to look at can be found, on our website, sustainablepracticesltd.org. And there are several categories from water, air, environment, 6 different categories that they can pick from. And we believe that this will assist people in terms of seeing the power of visuals and promoting a solution and promoting understanding. And that's also why we have the partnership with the Orpheum, and we show sustainable or sustainability-based films on a monthly by monthly basis, because this is another major conduit for us to get the messaging out for the need for social action. But just backtrack to the film contest, and forgive me, I just get so passionate about this that I can move, unfortunately, to too many different subjects at one time. But the film contest, even the sculpture, we've had that designed by Bob Marcus, who is a local bronze sculptor, and we have called the sculpture the Steward. So it's our version of the Oscar. So we have a solid piece of metal, and we're very excited about that because we think it elevates our contest too to something that's hopefully meaningful to people, because it embodies what we signify as our organization, or try to exemplify as our organization, which is sustainable practices and a responsibility to steward.
That's great. And when is the deadline?
October 15th. So we have a long deadline, and that's primarily because this is the first time this contest is being launched. The contest was initiated May 15th. So it's a very long period of development. But when you think about it, short film is just like saying something short and concise. It requires perhaps more editing than a longer film does. Yes. So we have that embedded in the time period. We also have embedded the fact that this is initiating contest for us, and because of that, we need to get the word out. So you're bringing up this question and asking us about this. We appreciate so very much, because hopefully this will be a mechanism to get more people involved in the contest. The more people that are involved, the more that we can change the way we think. What we have to fundamentally understand is that we live in a social construction, right? So everything that we were born into existed because somebody else thought it might be valid at a particular point in time. So it's our job today to break that social construction, because we have new information. There are new things that we need to do today that we realize need to be done, because we can see the damage of all the decades that came before us. And it's really up to us to leave the world in a better place, with also a sense of stronger values that tie to the environment. Values are transmitted generationally, so are actions. So we may not be the beneficiary of our actions, but knowing that our values live on to protect what maybe those came before us didn't realize needed protection, that should give us, I think, in my opinion, a feeling of validation for being here. So that's what we really stand for. That's my philosophical love point, if I can say it that way. I think it's really, truly a labor of love. It is what we have to do. We don't really have a choice, and it's unfortunate that we have to re-embed this thought process. It's too bad that we dropped it off somewhere along the line.
Your passion is absolutely contagious. Just absolutely love it. Thank you for being here. And I also look forward to having you back after the contest, and the submissions or the winners have been chosen, and we can have another show to share.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much. We'll hopefully get a chance to share the videos too with you.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you wanted to add for the audience today?
There is, but it's more philosophical, if I may.
Sure, of course.
Okay. Well, a lot of times we get this pushback about how it's human nature to be aggressive, that competition is basically what we are focused on as people. And I just would like people to think about one simple thing. Aggression, by its very definition, will dominate lack of aggression or passive behavior. So it's not necessarily that aggressive behavior or competitive behavior is the dominant factor of human activity or how we innately behave. It's the one that will always be observable because of its own definition. It'll crush cooperation. So when you think about that, remember that there's a strong possibility that we are meant to be more cooperative, but it only takes one person to break that model. So speaking from an economic perspective, we have to be very vigilant with regard to our values, because it only takes one person breaking free from that sense of moral obligation to create the outcomes that we see around us.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, too.
It was great having you.
Thank you.